Welcome everyone to the PartsEdge live webinar series. Today we're going to be talking about the secret to cleaner, smarter inventory, and that's all with the source setup. So I'm Kaylee Filio. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director with PartsEdge. Chuck Hartley, the founder of PartsEdge, will be presenting mostly today. And then we also have, I'm sorry, what?
I said hi all.
Okay. And then we also have Blake Featherly. He is one of our resident parts experts, inventory specialist, onboarding specialist, does a lot of things for us, and he's awesome. So welcome. Take it away, Chuck.
Okay, well, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you're from. We are recording from lovely Whitefish, Montana, which is where our offices are. So anyway, we're glad to have you aboard, and we have kind of a small crowd, so please feel free at any time. If you have a question as we go through this presentation, just enter it in the chat section. We love to hear ideas or questions or whatnot. We do these webinars for you guys, so just wanted to let you know that at any point you want to ask a question, please do. So the secret to a cleaner, smarter inventory, talking about source setups. Well, the first thing as we move through this is what I want to do is take you back, and I want to take you outside your typical parts management. And I want you to think of yourself as a grocer. Now you're running a grocery store, okay? And within a grocery store, now you're the manager, and you think of supply chain management at a grocery store. And I bring up these two items. I've talked about this for 30 years. Here you have milk. You sell hundreds of gallons a day. It needs to be refrigerated. And then we go down to asparagus. Canned asparagus has an infinite shelf life. You sell a couple of jars a week. So as a grocer, you sit and ask yourself, how would I set my day supply for these two different commodities? And more importantly, when would I decide maybe a couple of cans a week isn't enough to carry any, but you got to have it, right? But your criteria on carrying these, how would you set them? What we see typically with automotive dealerships is that they tend to put the milk in the same source, or if you happen to be dealer track, they call them stocking groups. So when you do that and you got milk and canned asparagus, sit and think about that. You got that in one source. How would you set the day supply? If you set your day supply really high to make sure that you kept a couple of cans of asparagus, you're going to end up with a ton of milk. If you set the day supply for the milk, you'll run out of canned asparagus. So what we tend to see is people, when they're doing stock orders, and we'll get to ASR, aka rim and arrow, about this, but when you get to this, what tends to happen is parts managers end up adjusting their milk down and their canned asparagus up because they find a happy medium with the day supply to try and meet both of these commodities, if that makes sense to you. So thinking about this, now let's put two commodities that you are used to dealing with in here. The milk now becomes an oil filter that you sell a whole bunch a day, and the canned asparagus is a molding, a color-coded molding that potentially you don't sell a lot of anyway. So now thinking about that, if you have the molding and the oil filter in the same source, you're doing a lot of work in the system that you don't need to do, because the DMS systems, you can break them out and do this separately so you don't have to spend so much time making adjustments on your inventory. One of the things that we've seen, having worked with over the years, probably as many as 600 dealerships over the years, and doing setups and whatnot, one of the things we've learned, and this especially comes from this one statement, why source tends to be a dirty word is the DMS vendors really discourage multiple sources. Okay. Why? It's because they get to manage less. They don't have to work as hard for you, being the customer. The less sources you have, the easier for them to work and support it, which is just crazy. The second reason, and this is really important, is creating a source takes some research to make it work properly. And I'm going to show you an example of what I'm getting at with one of the vendors and their setups and all the different things you need to see. And what happens is most parts managers, they go in to create a source and not understanding all the different settings, whether it be for pricing, phase-in criteria, whatnot. What ends up happening is they don't get it set up right. It's not working right. So they move everything back and go, well, I'll just have to worry about it later. The reason for that is because when you get with these DMS systems, this is an example with CDK. First off, what controls the source? You've got the day supply, the phase-in criteria, pricing matrix, potentially source accounting, price code adjustments. Let's say these are accessories and we want them to sell at list instead of matrix, and you have a separate asset or sale account for accessories, which probably a lot of you listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about. The manufacturer pricing tape, making sure the master is updating consistently that it's attached to this new source, and EOQ, economic order settings, even though that's pretty much irrelevant anymore, still, these are some things that you do. Now, thinking about all these different things when you decide, I want to try and isolate a commodity and make it do something different. Here is an example of CDK and the things you have to think about to build a new source. First off, you got to go into MSOSO and add the source at that point. Then you go into what they call inventory replenishment options, which this is where you do your day supply, your phase-in criteria, your monthly waiting, which are all settings in one big screen. And you think, oh, good, that's it. Not even close. Now you got to worry about, do I want this to matrix or not to matrix? Oh, I got to go to SPB and copy that over. And then you got to go to PMU and make sure you attach the master tape update to update all the critical fields. Now we get into source accounting if you're setting up like tires or GOG or accessories. Oh, we have to go into OSSA to set up counter tickets to go to the right sale account and the right asset account. And oh, by the way, on service, we got to go to the -S account and set that up based on the labor type to make that work as well. Lastly, you go to OSPC if you want to have some overrides on the price codes. And a lot of people now with tires and so forth, again, this is CDK specific, but I'm telling you this for a reason, because a lot of these vendors have these same different windows and setups. You might have to go to IFO because you're attaching tire tax or tire disposal fees, or in your bulk oil waste fees that you pass on. Now you got to go to IFO and make sure that you set up a fee code. So you can see here that while this list has 8 different things, there's probably about 12 things, because underneath several of these, you got multiple things to do. No wonder why nobody wants to build a source. And a lot of times trying to contact some of these vendors about it can create a lot of headaches, because even to some degree, the people haven't been trained enough to know exactly how it has to work. So with that being said, and I'm not trying to discourage you from sources. If anything, I'm trying to encourage you to add sources. Take the time to make it doing your research, adding the sources, and going through your setups and making them work is going to save you a lot of time. A little work up front to set up the sources saves a lot of time when you're trying to break down and organize your inventory more efficiently. We've run into a lot of things with different DMS vendors over the last few years. And we see this happen all the time. And we get these statements when we're talking with potential clients or new clients who just migrated from DMS vendor A to DMS vendor B. The DMS vendors don't bring over all the source setups. And since this is such a small group, we just went through several Techion migrations where they went from another DMS, whether it was CDK, Reynolds, one of them DealerTrack. And one of the things, when we went in, they brought over the sources and they seemed to carry over the pricing really well. But the day supply, the phasing criteria, and some of the other critical things were completely blank. Completely blank. One of the things we focus on here at PartsEdge all the time, a big deal, is for stock parts. And the little graphic here, and Kaylee actually came up with it. I think it's pretty cool. It's basically shows you're burning money. And I call this idle capital. These are parts on hand that did not meet your phasing criteria. If you listen to me at any other time, one of the things you've heard is the term for stock. We did a study on this back in 2005 with American Honda because I kept bringing up this term, and American Honda, they go, okay, we understand it, but what causes it? Where does it come from? These, again, are the 6 main reasons and why you might want to create a source and move these 4 stock parts that you're forced to put in your inventory and give a bin location, have a source to put them in so you can isolate them and track them completely differently. But here are the 6 main reasons that we found for forced stock inventory. Number 1, as we did this study, and it still holds true 20 years later, over-ordering by technicians to solve customer issues in the shop, especially under warranty conditions. They'll order the module, the sensor, and the harness. The sensor fixes it. They hand the module and the harness back to the parts department. Typically, those parts become instant idle capital. Number 2, if you're big into wholesale, returns from wholesale customers, especially body shops. It's still it. And I actually had someone correct me and say, the last NADA standard I saw is the average body shop sends back 12% of all the parts that they buy from a dealer. And I had someone who corrected me and said, no, that's more like about 15 to 18% now, that it's even worse. So, being in that wholesale arena with body shops is a tough bird if you're not prepared or you can't control some of those returns. And a lot of this, they don't return the fender, the fascia, and the hood. They return tape stripes, moldings, those things that literally almost become instant idle capital. Number 3, and this has moved up the chart, ASR programs. If you happen to be a GM dealer listening here or a Chrysler store, mainly GM, you guys coined a phrase back in 2010 called one-hit wonders. And why GM dealers have learned never post lost sales, because you can post a lost sale on a fender and tomorrow it comes up as a stocking policy part and you have to take 8.5 out of 10 parts to remain compliant. So they tend to overstock and turn dealerships into virtual warehouses by causing you to carry these parts. The good news is it's guaranteed. The bad news is you bear the holding cost for 18 months. I'm probably preaching to the choir if any of you listening are GM, but that's the thing that you think about when you start to look at ASR manufacturer programs. Don't get concerned about it. It's the way it is. But ASR programs that were designed by the manufacturer are meant for them to control their velocity in their own supply chain, not to benefit you, the dealership. Number 4, and this could be pretty big at some dealerships as well, customers failing to return for repairs, especially new vehicles under warranty that are non-critical. They got that nick in the door trim panel. You order that trim panel, it's $800, and the customer goes, it doesn't look that bad. I don't want to be inconvenienced. you get stuck with the door trim panel. We see that those first four are primarily 85 to 90% of it. Number 5, order errors by parts advisors. There is a price for training parts advisors. They make mistakes, just so you know. And lastly, speculation. Stocking parts based on a gut decision instead of testing any criteria. There's some healthy speculation, such as, hey, here's a new vehicle. There's a new air filter, a new cabin filter, new brakes. Okay, put those in. You want to have those. Unhealthy speculation, and take it from someone who did this. I bought every clothing piece that I could for Jeep, and I created a boutique at our Jeep store. And I thought I created a great environment. We had customers who came in and thought, I was coming to buy a part for my Jeep. I didn't know I was coming to a clothing store. Literally, we ended up giving away 2/3 of what was in there. I did it based on gut instead of testing and phasing criteria. And of course, creating a source for your obsolete inventory. These are parts that are over 12 months no sale and 12 months no receipt. If you haven't listened to one of my seminars on this, I beat it into everybody's head. If I could control my inventory more effectively, I'd do it based on the last time I bought a part, not the last time I sold a part. But one of the things, this is what I wanted to point out about special orders and whatnot. 95%. And remember, you can get this emailed or watch it again or take a snapshot of this. 95% of obsolete parts come from forced stock and unfulfilled demand. 95%. Only about 5% comes from, let's say, a set of brake pads that all of a sudden they don't fit a model anymore. They're 5 years old and they had an active life and phased out. 95% of these parts never hit the criteria, never had an active life. That's what leads to that obsolete number. I call it a trickle-down effect, and that's why isolating your special orders is so critical, and making sure what gets ordered is sold. Having that source is because unfulfilled special orders turn into what we call forced stock, which in turn, most of that forced stock, about 95% of it, ends up being obsolete inventory. So that's why it's so critical up front to control your special orders, and having a source to do that will help you to run reports, look at the dollar value, and make sure what's truly getting ordered is needed. So here's kind of a typical source guide. I'm going to go through it really quick, because when you look at this and you think, oh my gosh, they got 20 sources here. Well, one of the things, you're only really managing 8 sources. And this happens to be if you're a Reynolds, dealer built, or CDK, where you have source by movement. If you're dealer track, you really only need 8 sources. But here we have some source by movement for your captive selling parts, source by movement for competitive, source by movement for accessories, the non-stock test parts having 3 and 9, 4 and 9, 5 and 9, 1 for special order parts, 1 for 4 stock parts, 1 for tires, 1 for obsolete parts, and again, a never stock. 8 sources that you have to manage. I would think that most of you, if you're not doing something like this, I would highly consider you think of doing something like that. Now, if you happen to be an ASR store, just create 1 source and make sure all your guaranteed parts are in there. Then the non-guaranteed parts, again, if you're dealer track, you only need 102. If you want to have some source by movement to control your days and make it work better, you create 3 sources there. You're guaranteed competitive for pricing. You're non-guaranteed competing with source by movement. Guaranteed accessories, source by movement for non-guaranteed accessories. Again, special orders, tires, and never stock parts. So out of 18 sources here, again, it's really only 8. much easier to control. Just so you know, when we set up a dealership, we tend to put somewhere between 60 and 80 sources there. And in some cases, some of our dealers use about 30 of them, some of them use them all. We create it so that we can dynamically and granularly break the inventory down and control it much more effectively, sending alerts, giving dollar values and whatnot very quickly when it comes to report generation and education on how my dealership is working so you can pinpoint areas. So again, the benefits of looking at a dynamic sourcing structure is it helps to eliminate excess value because you can control that day's supply. Remember the milk and canned asparagus. Trying to promote inventory breadth to take care of your technicians and your customers to make sure you're carrying more breadth in the parts and not a lot with excess inventory. Help to identify forced stock quickly. Oh, I just got stuck with a part, isolate it in a source and make it instantly obsolete unless it hits a phase-in criteria. Identify and control special orders easily. That should be at the top. I would say if you get anything out of what I've just talked about, that would be the most important thing. Saving time to calculate the right stock mix, even if you're ASR, having those sources. A lot of times when we talk with dealers, GM dealers or Chrysler dealers, we said, do you ever run a stock order? And they go, no, not at all. It's all aero and rim controlled. That's not true. And then I go, well, what happens if you have a part that you sold that wasn't controlled? Oh, we throw it on a daily. Very reactive instead of being proactive. Again, an important part is able to set accurate pricing. A lot of times, folks, I've done seminars where I have people bring their matrix reports. They bring it in, and I also make them bring their overrides. And then I look through their matrix, and then I look at their overrides, and the S equal override report is 20, 30 pages long. And I said, well, why is that? And they go, well, our matrix in this certain area is a little high. We okay to override it? Oh, heck. If you can set your system up correctly, your people should never have to override the sale of a part if it's sold and set up correctly. Allows for proper source accounting. I can't tell you how many times we've been on the phone talking with people that my office says I have 30,000 in tires and I really have 15 or vice versa. That's a source accounting setup. Happens all the time. It really just helps to increase accuracy and consistency. I mean, the more organized your inventory is, the better it's going to work for you. Make your DMS work for you, not you work for it. And again, when you do that, it really helps to increase sales and profitability and gives you a better return on your investment. Whew, okay. So with that covers everything. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to send us a chat here. We'll be here for a couple of minutes. You got the slide up here. Next month, we're going to go through the flaw in DMS fill rates and turn calculations. We're going to give you an accurate way to do it within your inventory this day and age and what you need to know to get that accomplished. So that'll be next month. That'll be the webinar that we cover. And other than that, I'm going to come up for air and see if there's any questions. Or Kaylee, Blake, you got anything to add?
No, that was great, Chuck. See if we get any questions.
Chuck,
I feel like
thought,
yeah.
Sorry, Kaylee. Covered a lot of great meat there. In terms of a manager reviewing their source setup, our thoughts here on, time, should they do it once a year? You gave a lot of examples, whether it's, hey, I'm not getting the pricing I want, or running out of supply or stock, or not being adequately stocked. But outside of those, I mean, given a time frame, hey, I should do this once a year minimum.
Personally, I'd say quarterly, ideally, if you can do it. It's really easy to run your existing setups. and just take a look at them. Obviously, if you have a problem with pricing or whatnot, you're going to be looking at it right away, and trying to figure out the problem or getting a hold of the DMS vendor to make sure that it works. And remember, your DMS vendors, and I know a lot of their support tends to be terrible right now, but they're the ones who design this system. We may be experts on them because that's all we deal with is part settings day in and day out. But at least quarterly, kind of review it. If you feel like you've got too much excess inventory, slow down your day supply a little bit on some of your faster moving items. That'll slow down your excess inventory. Blake, you bring up a good question. Like one of the things we see all the time, we'll go in and look at a report and we'll see their excess inventory is like huge. And then we go in and see what is it showing as excess. And a lot of dealerships, they set up their gas, oil, and grease. They know they're never going to order it because it comes in bulk. They come in and fill up the tanks. And when they fill up the tanks, they have a source set up and they put a 1-day supply and never order it. And all of a sudden, a 1-day supply, their best stocking level is all of a sudden, well, your best stocking level over a 7-day period is 1,800 quarts. That's what it says it would be. And yet your best stocking level will say 1, but you got excess at 1,835. All of a sudden, where we see most excess inventory when we isolate that is they have an unrealistic day supply setting very low, and it calculates out these very low BSLs. So their on hand is exorbitant. So, if you're never going to order gas, oil, and grease, go set it to a 20-day supply low and a 30-day supply high because you never want to run out of that. Calculate it to get a realistic stocking level so that it doesn't make your excess look terrible. Tires is another great example. Tires, you want to carry that set of 4, and if you only sell 1 set of those tires every 2 months and you got like a 15-day supply, 3 of those tires show up as excess, but yet you got to maintain the 4. So with that being said, Blake, looking through those settings to see where is my excess, and it more than likely is an unrealistic day supply. To do that quarterly or to review it is not a bad example.
Excellent idea.
See, those are the types of questions, guys. Hey, please feel free. I'd love to hear any question that you guys have. I showed an example with CDK, but if you go and you think about, with Techion, they didn't move anything over. With Reynolds and Reynolds, it's really easy to create a source. You can go down and open an existing source and say, I want it to look just like this. And at the bottom, you go copy, create the new source. The one headache that they have is that then you have to go into 2565 and make sure you set up all the price codes. And oh, by the way, if you're doing source accounting, there's 2571 for counter tickets and 3636 for repair orders on the service side. Dealer track, you create a source, you got to go through every service type and add all your sale accounts to make it work right. Every DMS seems to have some little headache when it comes to creating a source or a stocking group. So the best example I had was just showing CDK, but I could have bored you to death and gone through all the slides, but no need to do that. If you have questions, just let me know.
Yeah, I think Blake has another question for you.
Sure.
Well, no, I was just thinking, I was typing it to Kaylee, Wonderman, and Chuck, I know that on our webinars here, we're not here to sales pitch people. But I think it's valid. I mean, you as the founder of PartsEdge, you obviously understand intrinsically the value of breaking it out, and everything you edified today, obviously is extremely good rationale as to why we do that. And for anybody here, that, again, this is not our point, is to pitch what we do. But again, Chuck, I know you won't, but to your credit, that's why we bring up, we often implement, 60 to 80 sources. And the technology that you and Cliff, your other partner, have come up with is based on the understanding, hey, you should set this up, and you've edified again today why. But to be able to come to somebody like us, because if somebody looked at that, they, some people here may be saying, that's a kind of a daunting task. You pointed out, hey, it's really worth the effort, and it is. But our end, again, you and we, we're the experts on that. And if anybody here wants assistance with that, really that is, of course, what we do. We go in and leverage the power of the DMS to all of its extent. And again, combine it with our technology, again, that you guys have created, and assist clients like yourself with leveraging the DMS to its maximum extent. And again, taking some of this, kind of grunt work off of your guys' plate, if this happens to seem like a daunting task. Because, Kaylee, you always bring this up, anytime somebody comes to us that wants help with this, we help with this type of situation, going in and being experts at each DMS, setting up this process, really assisting managers with this level of task. Because again, as you pointed out, we don't do anything that nobody's not capable of. The DMSs are all set up to handle this sort of thing, and that's why they have it, and they should be broke up that way. But for anybody here that wants help, of course, that is what we do, and that's what, as Chuck has edified, we're experts at. So I want to point out, again, to your credit, that's exactly why you've created this company, because this can be a daunting task for these managers or directors in these dealerships. So definitely very valid information, of course.
Yeah. Well, and
sorry, I'm going to toot your horn for you. So
yeah. Well, thank you. Remind me to give you a commission on that. But really, folks, it really boils down to, if you're not looking for someone externally or a third party to manage it, just remember your computer vendor. What we tend to see here is that most people only utilize about 15 to 20% of its capabilities. It's the other 80% that's out there. These people have written programs, and a lot of their support people don't even know they exist. And we find them through trial and error. And to maximize that DMS is exactly what you're paying for. So we do have a question here from Randall. Does MSSO and CDK have a price control? No, it doesn't, Randall, depending on what you're trying to control. There you can go into OSPC to control the pricing. That's the price codes where you set it up, and or a matrix. Let's say you use the price 6 field for your matrix on CDK. You can have the matrix price 6, and let's say you put your batteries in a different source and you don't want them to be matrix. You make your matrix for price 6 in that source list, 0 to 99999, make it list plus 0. Now, when your people go to sell it at price 6, it'll sell it straight list. So the controls are in two different programs with CDK, Randall. They're an OSPC, where you can tell a price code to do one thing and override what the standard is. And number 2 is in your matrix. You can set a different matrix based on each source as well. So I hope that answers your question. If you want to be a little more specific and ask a question, Randall, please feel free. Okay, you got it. If you got any more questions like that, Randall, please feel free to reach out. So good point, Blake. Great seminar, guys. I love talking sources, because that's what we sit and do all day long here. Creating sources, going in, organizing inventories, and running. That's the meat of what we do every day. So if you've got questions, you want to understand something, and you don't want to sit on hold for an hour with CDK, Randall, feel free to give us a call. There you go.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chuck. And
Yep.
we'll see you guys next month for, what was it, fill rate calculations, churn rates, all of that
Yep.
good stuff.
Yep. Thanks for joining us, folks. Have a great day.